Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Breaking the Mold, How Modular Tech Sparks Fearless Retail Innovation. We're excited you could join us. My name is Megan Billingsley, and I'll be moderating today's event. Today, we'll be doing a deep dive into how advances in modular technologies are powering innovation across retail. It's no secret that retailers are pressured to innovate quickly in order to stay nimble in the face of evolving consumer expectations and operational complexity. In this dynamic environment, time is always of the essence, and 44% of retailers prioritize faster rollouts of in-store tech, according to research conducted by Incisive in collaboration with Toshiba. So we'll be discussing the technology that enables this level of agility, as well as actionable steps that retailers can take to optimize their tech stacks to power growth in today's environment. We are thrilled to be joined by our speakers, Marija Zorotovic, General Manager, Consumer Industries at Intel Corporation, and Frederick Carlgren, VP, Marketing and Communications at Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions. Before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button located in the top right corner of your presentation window. If you need technical assistance, click on the Help widget located on the bottom left corner of your console. We encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Q&A widget at the bottom of your console. We will try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. Please know we do capture all questions. So to kick off, I'd like to ask each of our speakers to provide a quick introduction of themselves and their work. Marija, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. First, thank you, Frederick, Toshiba team, and Retail Dive for this opportunity to join you today. I'm so pleased to be able to be here. So my name is Marija Zorotovic. I'm the General Manager for Consumer Industries for the Intel Edge and Computing Group. Within my organization, we are focused on building out new systems and solution engineering, but in other words, really focusing on industry challenges across retail, grocery, convenience, and a whole host of other consumer-facing environments. We work with Toshiba to define what solutions are most needed to deliver the best experience in industry in a way that is flexible, extensible, and a way to satisfy retailers' requirements of today, while also leaving room for addressing, the ever-changing expectations of consumers of tomorrow. And that's where we're really at an exciting place. For my background, I've had the opportunity to work inside retail brands, wearing a number of different hats supporting the business, and then also being able to sit at the table, not only as a retail brand, but then sitting in a cloud software AI role, and then now moving over to Intel in a silicon hardware role. And so it gives me a unique perspective to figure out how do we solve some of the most challenging industry, opportunities to drive and deliver a better experience, new operational efficiencies, and innovation for tomorrow. So I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. And Frederick, would you tell us about yourself as well?
Yeah, thank you for being here, Marija. Great to be on here with you and the Intel team for your perspectives. I've been in the retail industry for over 20 years with Toshiba now for over a decade. Variety of different capacities, now focused on marketing communications, but also business development. So I get a lot of different perspectives on what's going on in the industry, and get a chance to work with some of the biggest, greatest retailers in the world, and our huge ecosystem of business partners. And so it's always fascinating to me in the industry. It's fascinated me for years in terms of the opportunities that exist, and the way that technology can help address customer experience, the retail operations side of things, sustainability around operations, and really then ultimately the innovation and how we as a vendor and as a partner to our clients really help the industry thrive and prosper. And create a positive trajectory and path forward for our clients. And that's part of obviously what we'll be discussing today in terms of the role of modularity and how technology can really play a part in that acceleration of value for our clients. So happy to be here.
Great to have you. Thank you so much. So with that, let's get right to it. As I mentioned in the introduction for this webinar, retailers face mounting pressures to innovate rapidly as new technologies come to market and consumer expectations continue to evolve. So they need to be ready for anything with respect to technological shifts or changes in the market. And at the same time, they're looking for a way to accomplish that while boosting their operational efficiency as well. So Frederick and Maria, how are these pressures impacting investment in technology, and what retailers are looking for from their tech stacks?
Yeah, let's start by just thinking about the word modularity and what it means. I think maybe we all have a similar definition or perspective on that, but to me, it's quite simply more of those smaller bite-sized components or technologies that you can deploy, almost like Legos, right? But why? The question is why, right? Why are we having this discussion in the first place? The thing that we hear over and over is the need for greater flexibility and adaptability to business needs or consumer expectations or operational requirements. And so flexibility is key to this conversation around modularity. And whether it's software where we invest in microservices-based platforms and architectures, or hardware where we're talking about different ways to think about our strategy of building and creating opportunities to utilize hardware in different ways. We call that our modular expansion platform. That we're kind of thinking about it the same way, right? Modular components that can be reused in different ways. So whether retailers looking to deploy new computer vision use cases that they can plug into their environment for things like product identification or loss prevention, whether it's adding other sensors to shelves or in aisle for inventory, boost real-time inventory visibility, or something like swapping out technology on the front end when components become outdated or out of support, and making it easier to refresh without a full capital investment, to really update the technologies needed to support and boost your business. So it's that future-proofing, the scalability, the adaptability. That's the key to this conversation. I think why it's such an important one to have, especially when you juxtapose it to where we've been. We've been in the retail business for over 50 years. And that's this conversation, maybe due to technical reasons, or for others, where we come from a monolithic world. A lot of technologies and solution stacks are quite monolithic and have been. And so the shift in moving away from that to modular technologies and components and solutions is really an important discussion to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agree. And I think this topic of modularity, it's been there, but I think this is really the right time in which many retailers and technologists are seeing and understanding the capabilities that come with that, of shifting to a mindset in the organization that moves to that modular technology and that much more agile environment. I would say that, when we think about, I think about times when I was working at a retail brand and we're trying to bring in new experiences, and we were working with much more of an end-to-end system provided by a specific solution provider. That ability to be flexible or shift or put more emphasis on a particular module became a bit more cumbersome. It was very hard. You kind of almost had to work within the framework of the solution and kind of shift it where you could, or pivot it to what you had as an undesired experience. But today that doesn't have to be so. Modularity really is about that flexibility, as you mentioned. I think retailers are dealing with a challenging environment, not only to always focus on those ever-changing needs or demands of the customer, but there are new cost constraints that are coming into play, workforce skills that come into play, that increasing speed to market and the ability to shift or pivot as fast as possible with new insights and learning. And this is where you see forward-thinking retailers that are really looking about investing deeply in capabilities. The capabilities in their organization that are going to become the differentiators for their brand and for service. And this is where that modular technology, that agility, the flexibility comes into play. And they're really able to capitalize on that type of methodology when it comes to designing or determining your experience and the accompanying solutions to those experiences.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point around the investment and financial, right? With maybe more monolithic technology stacks, you're really talking about replacing, but sometimes replacing for like function, only to maybe get a little bit incremental. In this discussion, we're really talking more about how does a more modular approach also allow your investments to be truly focused on the incremental needs and capabilities that you have to have in order to support your business. And so we work with one client in the grocery space. They really needed to focus on their shrink challenges. Well, we have specific modules, capabilities, computer vision capabilities to add to their front end lanes that can allow them to do that without necessarily replacing the entire front end lane, right? So being able to add capability that's incremental value and create the business case around that as opposed to a full reinvestment, I think is important. And one thing that modularity is not, right, to just say it up front, it is not just making several unique individual decisions about maybe best in class technologies. It is still a comprehensive strategy of working with vendors and partners around how to create incremental investment decisions, but it still has to be considerate of the full scale view of what your enterprise is going to look like and how that technology works together. But so I think that's a great point that you made there, Mario.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's not about these discrete pieces or components, right? You still have to be mindful of the entire holistic experience and how all of those pieces are going to come together. And if we even step back further, because we know technology and a system and a solution is really an enabler, right, of the business, an enabler of an experience. This is where planning on a capability, looking across the business, and really truly starting with what is the business trying to achieve? What is the actual business strategy? And then stepping into the capability conversation, designing the experience. And this modularity allows for incremental gains and value. It also allows for speed. And it also helps to minimize risk of adding in something that is new from an experience or a feature set, and being able to compartmentalize based on taking not just the hardware approach, but also the solution design and the software side. And so these are some of the unlocks that I think that you gain, that retailers are realizing how valuable these are to the business.
Excellent points. Thank you so much. Would you say that the shift to modularity is primarily driven by a need for rapid deployment of new technologies, or are there other factors driving this shift too?
Yeah, I don't think the conversation should be around just rapid deployment of new technology. Obviously, we are talking about technology and the advancements in technology that make this conversation feasible, if you will. But to me, it's, and what I'm hearing, it's mostly around speed, but also some of that operational control and being able to manage, the needs of the store and store operations. I also recently, had some interesting conversations with people around tech debt, right? And thinking about why are we in the place that we are to begin with, right? And how do we manage that tech debt? How do we get out of it? How do we start to take and make individual decisions that allow us to get into a more modular place? Maybe we'll come back to that in a little bit. But the other retailers are all unique. And we, like Mario said with Intel, we work with grocers, convenience and fuel retailers, specialty retailers, hospitality retail, all have unique business needs, and looking across that, different store formats, different types of requirements. So, the role of modularity there to me is really interesting. You can have unique endpoints, let's say hardware touch points that suit a different, certain store formats, for example, But if you think about it from a modular approach, they can have the same core technical foundation, the same core systems. Maybe they have slightly different enclosures, right? But you're talking about building a strategy that involves some consistency in terms of how and what you deploy to meet those individual needs. And the other piece to this, which is really important, because we really want to focus on with our clients, the total end-to-end picture is the serviceability, right? So you're not making individual unique decisions for what's needed in one type of retail format or another. You're saying we're going to try to have a consistent modular approach that also takes into account how do we service, maintain, and keep our systems up and operational, because without that, of course, you really aren't accounting for that full experience. And so that's another thing that's important. So again, some core technologies, modular components, technologies with the various enclosures. What could that look like in real life? It's tabletop kiosks, full-scale self-checkouts, point-of-sale systems, right? But modular technologies and components that can be utilized across the board to meet the different needs and endpoints that various retail segments have.
I think another piece to add to that, and this is where I know I get super passionate around what can be and what's possible. We're talking about the merits of modular technology and what it can unlock and enable. A critical piece to that, to really leverage the power of that, is around the data strategy. Modularity and having different pieces and parts that may come together requires integration, and it particularly requires the unlock of that data, which is around the data strategy. And this is probably a place where I have a conversation with many brands around it's not just about the experience delivered and the system that's going to go enable it or the solution, but also what is the bigger data strategy within the organization to ensure the unlock of that modularity that can be delivered. There are new insights that will be gained from that data. And an organization needs to be able to access it, utilize it, and spread it across the right applications at the right time, because you're going to use that data to be able to power more, to be able to deliver improved experiences, to be able to deliver better insights across the organization. And so again, it's not just focusing on one area. It's more about how can a data strategy across an organization help to unlock new capabilities and new value that can be gained across the brand.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, as we're going to get into, like any conversation these days, artificial intelligence, right? It's the data that's key. And that's why these modular discussions can't be just about making individual decisions. It's a holistic approach and strategy with a modular mindset, because at the end of the day, the software platforms, the modular platforms, the data, that strategy around this has to be consistent and unified so you can truly unlock the greatest value and opportunity here. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but certainly there's a tremendous amount of excitement now about additional computer vision, AI-based use cases, and how that can unlock all these different experiences that the retailers are looking to implement. So I think that consistent holistic data strategy has to underpin a modular strategic approach to technology.
And Frederick, would you agree? I feel like as I go out and talk to more retailers about building for the future and what's possible, that I'm excited to see that it's not just the customer experience side of the house that's wanting to engage in those conversations. I'm seeing other areas of the business that may have been in ops or LP or even merchandising or buying functions. And I think that's great because, all of this data, all the insights plays across the entire organization. And I think back in the day when planning occurred, you tend to put that investment on the front of the house. You tend to put it on the experience, the thing that's engaging with the customer. But now with this modularity and kind of a complete unlock for the organization, you're starting to see some of those other areas that may have been underinvested in because they weren't necessarily directly in front of the customer. And I think that those brands that can capture both the product side, buying function, through critical operational and inventory, all the way out to experience, those are the brands that are going to be able to win and capture that new demand.
Yeah. We work with clients and with our friends at Intel. One example is a client of ours who deployed essentially computer vision technology for produce recognition and shrink at self-checkout. Well, that was the initial use case. When we started to look and measure the impact of that, yes, it had a positive impact on the ability to manage shrink. But guess what? It also led to a significant customer experience improvement because the way we implemented that and the recognition of items led to a faster throughput experience because of our ability to identify and show the consumer what was on the scale, which also led to greater accuracy for what was actually going through checkout, which meant there was better visibility to inventory and therefore better merchandising decisions. So the connection, as you said, between experience, operations, and that full end-to-end view, is in part enabled by the ability to make investments and to take this modular approach. But yeah, you're absolutely right that it's important to take that holistic view and bring all those parties together when having this type of conversation.
I love that you mentioned that because I did want to ask if there are any other use cases for AI or Gen AI that you're particularly excited about.
Yeah, so there is. I mean, there's so many opportunities here. One that I'm excited about too is when you think about the next steps towards a true agentic AI, right, and the ability to drive automation across the experiences, both operationally and from the experience standpoint. Take an example of those retail lockers that you see, right, that in certain stores or parts of the country house more high value merchandise. That's not a great customer experience. We all know that, right? And I think the retailers know that as well, but it's that balance. It's constantly looking at the balance between experience and operations. But AI and computer vision can play a role in this now to really shape some different types of experiences. One of the things that we showcase through some of the work and innovation that we do is the ability to understand who the consumer is and being able to identify if they're a loyal customer. You can then automatically, let's say, unlock some, literally and figuratively unlock some new opportunities that drive a different type of customer experience, either in the aisle or at self-checkout. And you can connect it to whether or not is there an associate already in the aisle. Well, if there's an associate in the aisle, maybe you don't have to have everything locked. When they leave that aisle, maybe you do have to lock things down or handle things differently from an operational standpoint. So that the agentic AI use cases are really just at the forefront. And I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there to drive some significant business value.
Yeah, I completely agree. And as I'm hearing you talk through some examples and the opportunity to better serve, the exciting part is this is the opportunity where we're bringing in the right type of sensing and signaling data capabilities into a physical, typically analog environment. And so for any of us who have been in retail that have been able to support both a web and mobile environment, and then contrasting that with a physical store environment, we know that in the stores, we've always been very data starved. It's very difficult to figure out where is that customer traveling. As the mobile phone has come into play, we've been given some new opportunities to capture those data signals. But again, whether it's CV, Gen AI, and Agentic, these are new opportunities to capture those signals, use the data in real time to then better provide a better offer, better service, better experience. I would say right now, where we're seeing Gen AI, the exciting piece is, we are still early in the forefront, as Frederick mentioned, with Gen and Agentic, because we're testing it out in small use cases. You can see that happening in retail, where there are very specific use cases that are being tested out for its merits, in which then will draw new insights to get to larger, much more systematic applications that solve a bigger workflow problem. But for Gen AI, I'm seeing places where, of course, we test on our employees first, the ability to prompt for information on inventory or merchandising or upsell opportunities, where it can pull across inventory data, pull across availability, pricing, et cetera, and provide a curated view based on the prompts of customer information. And that's a great way to provide better service and make your salespeople and your employees look smart in front of the customer. Be able to be on top of it and give a better response than was at the hands of the customer who are using their mobile device. I think the salesperson or the employee has often been caught flat-footed because they didn't have the same level of tools. I think on the agentic side, again, where Frederick mentioned being able to operationalize or create some automation within that workflow process based on the data, that's an exciting part too. And I think that's where, again, we're seeing moments in time where this is happening. But if we think about the bigger implication, it will be game changing. So, for example, some of the use cases I'm kind of keeping my eye on are around labor optimization. We know in stores it's very difficult to properly plan coverage on the floor, making sure that, again, you're offering best service, but there is an ebb and flow during the day. There's an ebb and flow during the holiday season. So how can AI and agentic AI creating next action with figuring out best optimized schedule for best service, right coverage, optimizing productivity, and then automatically provide, the notifications, et cetera, for going through with the scheduling, or things around proactive inventory adjustments, maybe to expiry dates. Particularly in a grocery store, a convenience where they're selling food that expires, it could be able to track and provide a notification, which then could provide a price change based on that notification automatically, versus having an employee in the store that has to manually go through, reprice, take a look at everything, and mark it down. So I think there's exciting things on the horizon that can change and link together workflow that has typically been pretty labor intensive and heavy, so that the employee can focus on other service mechanisms for the customer.
Yeah, so there's another piece to that I think is important in how technology has evolved, and that's the ability for true edge compute, right? And so when we talk about modularity, you mentioned latency as well, and it depends on the use case, right, of kind of what's required, but the increased capability to do true compute on the edge to eliminate latency in some of these use cases and deploy these modular capabilities and get that real-time response that either due to a need for the consumer to perhaps become aware of and take some action, or the store associate. Seeing tremendous acceleration in the capabilities there to have modular components and deployment with that true edge compute. And that's becoming a game changer in this space.
Absolutely. There's nothing worse than customer in front of you with an application spinning. So you're absolutely right. That's a critical piece of, really making the experience real and, making the case for edge compute in store.
Great insights, both of you. Thank you so much. I know our viewers will be chomping at the bit to start applying the principles that we've discussed today to help realize greater outcomes for their organizations. So with that, Frederick, Maria, what can readers do to make the most of a modular system to reach their business objectives?
I think I want to just reiterate a point we made a little earlier, which is, to me, modularity is a strategy and a mindset, not just a technology conversation, right? And so, and it always has to start with an understanding of the true capability and the business, the business need that has to be addressed. But it starts with business needs. It always does. And one of the first steps, that I would always suggest is make sure that you're engaging with your partners, right? And that your partners can work with you to perform store assessments, look at the operations, make recommendations in regards to, are there incremental capabilities that that are in play that should be part of the roadmap, or are there opportunities to remove friction in the experience or operations side? So certainly, in terms of putting things into practice, modularity is a very broad topic and could, as we talked about, has implications from a portfolio standpoint, or as a hardware, as a software, as a combination, what's your data strategy? So it really has to start with that assessment and understanding of business need and engaging your partners on, looking at what's going to be the steps you take and the incremental value you deliver.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think also, Frederick, you had mentioned, you still have to look holistically across all pieces within your environment, not just individual components. So to me, that means you have the strategy, as Frederick mentioned, you understand the capabilities that you want to invest in that create core differentiation for your brand. You understand your current landscape. So that's the assessment piece that Frederick was mentioning, understanding that, because you have to understand where your gaps are, or rate of change needs to be, and also where your strengths are as an organization. And then, even though maybe some of the examples we've given have had, edge compute and hardware at play, we also have software and the software architecture that needs to go along with it. That's going to enable the ability to, capitalize across the modularity, APIs, middleware. What is going to be the connection point to help catch all those signals of data, be able to push them to the right applications in real time on the edge? That's an important part of that. And so, again, it's not just one group. This is a collaboration of conversation. It's about strategic alignment for where the brand needs to head.
Yeah, a holistic approach to a modular path forward, right? And we understand that retailers are going to take and make decisions based on their own business situation and requirements, and you don't go from sort of quote unquote monolithic to modular overnight. There are different paths to get there. We have certain clients where we're taking it one step at a time and really looking at which pieces can we take out, how can we start putting modular solutions in place and get them there over time. But there are others who say, hey, business needs are so great in a particular area that either from the software or hardware side, we need to make a holistic, quick change to provide the flexibility that we need in order to operate our stores better. Get that too. That becomes that strategic partnership conversation that you have to have, because at the end of the day, there are uniquenesses in every environment. We've all been in retail for quite a long time and understand how that works. But it also takes partners who really understand the operational side of things. There's a lot of cool new technology out there, and we embrace the ecosystem. We have a partnership of or ecosystem of partners in our Toshiba world, but it really also takes that operational understanding of how to make modular solutions fit and work within a particular environment.
I agree, because the reality is most retailers, grocers, venues, hospitality environments, you're going to be facing a situation where you have legacy environment and then you're trying to add on new capability, right? And so modularity allows you to step in, like you were mentioning, and figure out kind of where's that rate of change going to happen. I think also a critical piece, and for those that have been in experienced design and product management within a consumer type business, you're always focused on the people, process, and tech changes. It's that three-legged stool. This isn't just a tech change. There is a people and a process aspect that comes along with this, particularly as organizations embrace modularity, embrace agile methodologies. in order to truly leverage the innovation that can come, the merits for moving towards this type of approach with managing experiences within the business. And, again, that's the exciting part of what comes. But you have to think holistically. You have to think about your workflows, which is the process and people that come along with it, because you can truly differentiate when you have, these new unlocks that are delivered in the organization.
So, as we kind of think about what does all this mean, one of the quotes that I think here at the Toshiba office we think about a lot is a CIO that said, I want us to do reckless experimentation. And that's not a word or phrase you hear very often from retailers, but it led to a conversation that it really was ultimately driving us in this direction, which is we have to, as an industry, move in a direction where you can do more, do more with less, get more incremental value of the investments that you make, provide better customer experience, really get to how you solve the core challenges of the day, whether that be labor, as you mentioned, whether it be shrink, whether it be other experience-related investments that you're trying to make. A modular mindset to really allow for the experimentation, the business value, and getting to that point quicker. That's really what we're trying to do, and what we are doing in the conversations and deployments that we're working on every day.
Couldn't agree more.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you both so much. It's been such a great discussion, and I think that that's also the perfect place to wrap things up. In the time that we have remaining, I'd love to take some questions from our audience. So jumping right in, and Mario, we'll have you take the lead on this one. What does the lift look like when rolling out a modular solution versus an end-to-end solution? How can we roll out new technologies without overwhelming IT?
Okay, that is a very loaded question. It's very big. So I'm going to hit it from one direction and make a comment on it. So if we assume a steady state where an organization has shifted to a modular agile environment with a rate of feature change is only limited by the desired experience and execution of that experience. So meaning the people, process, and tech are all very aligned. There really should not be limitations. The only limitations that are going to come into play are probably much more about people, process, the business change or rate of change within the organization, and the ability to execute well with the customer. In terms of not overwhelming IT, if that's the sentiment, then I would probably challenge the planning process, in that IT is a critical stakeholder, particularly if it's an IT organization that is serving the business directly out into your stores, your doors. They've got to be a part of the conversation and a seat at the table, because nothing is worse by delivering, an amazingly designed experience only to falter when it comes to the actual execution of that and the opportunity to be at go time with the customer. And so IT really needs to be a part of those conversations. Often they will have really great and critical insights about the architecture within a physical environment, limitations, challenges, or things that have to be problem solved. Now, backing up to your original piece, where I feel like it's a pretty big question to answer around what does it look like between rolling out a modular and an end-to-end. I think for the audience where you have legacy, where you have a much more monolithic stack in your application, and you have a system that is end-to-end predominantly provided by a single vendor. We know that to drive out new features or changes and updates, it is a all hands on deck. Why? Not only the development of those new features and experiences, if they're possible within the framework of the end-to-end solution, but also the time frame, the execution or the implementation of rollout, and the planning that's required to bring, test top to bottom, and then successfully roll out those updates without disrupting business. There's quite a bit of planning and effort. And the modular world we're talking about, where things are decoupled, like a headless architecture to it, that rate of change and the risk starts to go down because you're only snapping in and out different portions of the feature set, or maybe it's just updates that you've made to the VIP loyalty module. And so you're only touching that module. And in organizations that have this down, that are operating with that mindset and have their architecture set up for that, they're rolling out updates, on and on and on, like at a very fast pace without disruption to business. And also they can do it based on location. They can roll in. If something doesn't go well, they can pull back. And they just continue as a normal part of business versus kind of this big effort that takes place in a much more end-to-end solution.
Excellent. Frederick, any thoughts there?
I got nothing to add to that.
Okay, perfect. We'll move on to the next one, and Frederick, we'll have you take the lead on this. One of the key reasons this person is considering modular tech is the promise of rapid time to value. Do you have any advice on how to measure success as we roll out new tech?
So I actually think part of Mario's response there is addressing this really, really well too. Sure, you want time to value for the particular, let's say, capability or what you deployed, right? Does it meet the requirements? Does it address the business need? And how do you measure that? That's sort of standard, standard business procedure. What Mario was saying in terms of, well, how do you isolate and eliminate, remove, or minimize other investments, time, cost, complexities that you would in a more monolithic world when you think about things modularly, right? There's a huge benefit, and you need to think about how do you measure that? What are you no longer doing that you maybe would have done previously? And then there's a third component that we're very excited about when you're thinking about how do you bring out new capabilities faster in the first place? And the time to value, not just from when you deploy something, but from when you conceive of it, right? And when we talk about the rise of artificial intelligence and how we operate, that also includes how do you take concepts and ideas and bring those through requirements and definitions and coding and testing and piloting before you even get to the point of bringing things into a lab or the store. And we see great opportunity to drive incredible acceleration of how you get to the point where the CIO said reckless experimentation, right? From concept to getting it deployed and then measuring the value. Right, so there are really at least three different components there that I think are really important to look at holistically when we talk about the overall value of new modular technologies.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. I would add, and Frederick, you touched on this. There are going to be different buckets that organizations are going to want to measure against. Two that come to mind are around agility and the incremental value that's delivered. And so it's everything, like you said, around the development time, how you can cut that down from system downtime for when you do a new implementation, deployment, update time, time to use, adoption targets, operational measures, top line growth, or ROI per module that is released, or very specific depending upon the solution set, like speed of checkout, productivity, availability of inventory. I think you can cross everything from the development to the actually management of the implementation, the technology itself, through business KPIs.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question, and that is, how can you create a consistent data strategy when you're dealing with modular and legacy solutions? Maria, do you want to take the lead on this?
I'll do some highlights here. I think on the consistent data strategy, when you're dealing with modularity and legacy solutions, so you have this kind of mixed environment, I think the most important thing on the data strategy is that everyone is very clear. You have a cross-functional organizational group that's representing key stakeholders from different business areas, which means you have people in different business functions, different business domains, everyone that needs to be able to either contribute the data or leverage the data in their applications. So this is from everyone understanding the business strategy at hand, understanding the desired end state, what is the current state of the environment. We've talked about this before. You have to understand what's currently happening in the environment and making sure everyone understands that. Where are the gaps, where are the strengths, what's possible, what's not possible for that rate of change. Everyone has to understand, where are the core capabilities? What is the company saying we're going to double down on and invest in because it's a differentiator for our business versus other areas where it's not really a differentiator for us. We need it, but it's not a core capability that's going to set us apart from our competition. And then also being able to look at, the economics of the scenario, building that business case for change, understanding what the unlocks are going to be to the business once that end state or those target states are hit. I think it's, all that same, consistent business strategy and planning. It's just that, and I think, Frederick, you had kind of alluded to this. It's not just the one change of the experience with the technology that's implemented. This is really about the all up looking at the business and aligning those things to the strategy to go and enable that business strategy and those business outcomes. All of those pieces have to come together, and data has to be a critical piece of that conversation, not kept in each discrete bucket, but looking at it holistically across the organization.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned earlier that sometimes the store is a bit of a black box, right? And there's but the notion of I like IDC's term, super platform, right? The store as a super platform with all these connected systems and devices, right? And that's where the mindset and the solution thinking that we have as well, right? That is the core to enabling then a holistic view and data strategy that can truly allow you to do some pretty amazing things, I think, going forward.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That does it for us today. I'd like to thank our speakers, Maria and Frederick, for a great discussion. We appreciate you sharing your insights and expertise with us. And I'd also like to thank our audience for joining us today. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.